So, hello and welcome to another inspired episode of Inspired Good Fat Life. And I am really inspired today as I welcome a very dear friend of mine, Miss Liz Tekus from Fine Points in Cleveland, Ohio. And before welcome to the show, Liz.
Hi.
So we were taping early this morning, and she did me the very biggest honor of getting up early, and being on camera, which is, I know, not your favorite thing to do, but thank you.
You're welcome.
So a couple of just housekeeping things. Good Fat Life, our magazine, go to goodfatlife.com. And we have the beautiful print version. We have a digital version. We have a blog. We have lots of very cool things happening. Check us out. And before Liz and I start our conversation, I just want to let our listeners know how we met. We had moved... Right? We had moved, my husband and kids and I had moved from Oregon to Cleveland, Ohio in 1997. And my youngest son was about 12, and we needed to find a hockey team for him. He was trying out for this hockey team. It was about an hour drive away. And there was this woman, I didn't know anybody except the people I worked with. And there was this woman that was sitting there knitting at this hockey practice. And I'm like, I just need to meet her. So I literally went and sat down next to her and like, will you be my friend? And here we are like 27 years later. So welcome, Liz.
Thank you.
So, and one of the things that I just so much enjoy about Liz is she has this incredibly creative spirit and mind around art and creating and helping people, supporting people being their best selves. And Liz introduced me to meditating, mindfulness, I don't know if I thought about it, would be like dozens and dozens of things of one thing that led to the next that really shifted my life, really transformed my life into a world of possibility. So thank you for that. And
My pleasure.
and knitting. And so knitting, and Liz also has a clothing boutique, which has amazing jewelry and beautiful clothes and fun clothes. And in addition to all this yarn. And so let's just talk about knitting and having that dopamine hit, right?
Yeah.
So what is it? What do you see? Let me even frame that a little different. Good Fat Life is premise is built on deliberately and intentionally creating the life we want to live, right? So, and yet that's a fundamental belief in your life. And how would you say, where did you come to that? Actually, where did you find that?
Well, actually, I was trained as a teacher. I was educated as a teacher, and I used to teach theater. And now that I look back on some things, I realize that I've always been drawn to creating potential and helping people live up to their potential. So that might first be with my students, and then with the theater. And then knitting is a huge on potential because I can help people. I can see the potential in things, in creating things, and I can help guide people to that end.
And we were talking about that. You sent me a pattern, texted me a copy of a pattern this week that could be sweaters for our granddaughters for Christmas, right? and
Right.
and just the idea. I haven't touched the pattern. I haven't picked out yarn. I haven't even done any of that. But just the idea of creating that, what's possible, and all the joy I feel like I'm flooded with dopamine every time I even think about it, right? Because of the potential.
Yeah,
That's a great way to put it.
that's what it's all about. And when I saw that pattern, I immediately texted my three daughters in law and said, would your daughter like this? And immediately, within 2 minutes, all three of them responded and said yes in capital letters. So they saw it too. And that's what's fun about it. And then we talk about color. And so then there's another potential there. And it's just fun. It's life should be fun. And when you
Yeah.
think about that potential, it brings you to, I think, it brings you to a different level of something, whether it's making it yourself or getting a gift or thinking about it. It's all kind of wrapped into that vision, that carrot at the end of the stick. And that's what keeps me going because when people come into the store, whether they're coming to look for an outfit for somebody's wedding or make something for a gift or make something for themselves, we all see the potential there. It's like, how do you want this to look? How do you want to put this together? What colors? And then you start thinking about all those elements, and it's just fun. It's fun, and it's such a crapshoot because you just don't know who's going to walk in the store or what they have in mind or
Right.
who's on the other end of the telephone and what do they have in mind, and it's usually something about potential. They have an idea or they want to do something that has to do with that, and that's what I love.
So, and you could, as you're saying that, I'm thinking, oh, it could be Stephen Colbert calling, saying,
Yeah.
all right.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
So just tell our audience, a quick
Okay.
about that.
Well, we were really lucky, and we worked with the Stephen Colbert of the Late Show's team, and they put together a video for us, and it aired on the night before Thanksgiving of last year, and it's still the repercussions are still happening. And I 3 years ago I sent in a video because he said on air, if you have a small business and you want us to consider you for a business bump, send us a video. So I did, and I let it go and just, I knew, I just did it because I felt like I wanted to do it. That's another potential, I guess. And 2 years
Right.
later, a producer called me, and then for the next 6 months or so, we worked with the Colbert and CBS and Paramount, and they put together a video, and it's been incredible. And I feel
Which is
really
his.
lucky.
Yeah, the video is hysterical. We'll put the link in the show because
Oh, thanks.
it's
It's
worth for
funny.
anybody watching. Yeah, it is
Yeah,
funny.
it's funny.
Yeah.
And it's so far reaching. I never realized. I mean, that's another thing about this thing that we're talking about potential, about who saw this thing. And it's just so far reaching. It's just crazy to me. And I've never had an international reach like that. So it's great. I feel
So,
very gifted.
so as you're talking, I'm like, my mind's going, okay, we need to talk about the. There's so many aspects of things that you're bringing up that are noteworthy, I guess. And so first we'll continue with the knitting, and then I want to go over to the potential. So knitting, just the act of knitting itself, the motion, right? There's so much research and yeah, Liz knits everywhere. Ball games, hockey, movie theaters, wherever she goes, there's always knitting with her. I don't have that same skill. I can't concentrate the same way. So there is so much research that shows just the act of knitting creates mental calmness. A
Yeah.
little bit about that.
Yes, it does. And it's not something that I have an opinion about. It's scientifically backed up that knitting has many health benefits. It creates endorphins. It's good for your spirit. It's the motion of knitting, the repetitive motion that's calming. I know I'm all over the place half the time, but when I'm knitting, it makes me just sit in one place and it helps me listen better. And that's something I know about myself. And I know students who are knitting in their classrooms, they're able to take in information better. And it's just an interesting thing. The physicality of it is very helpful. It's a stress reliever. It's not, I wouldn't say it's a sedative. It's just like taking a sniff of lavender or something. It just calms you down
Yeah.
and makes you able to focus better, and it gets rid of some of the other distractions that
Right.
might be around you.
It's very soothing, and it also builds a community, which can add so much to the quality of life, right? To your good fat life because of the
Absolutely.
community that is in the knitting world.
Yes, and it cuts across gender and age and race and all of those things, because it's not unusual for a person to assist or help someone learn something about, and it cuts across all these categories, age or gender or race. Um, it's just a wonderful thing. No, I was going to say people like to share. People like to share their abilities with other people. It's like human nature to be able to coach somebody in the knitting world. People like to do that. It seems to be their nature to want to share that information.
And it seems also that it's not just sharing the information about knitting, but it's sharing life stories and experiences too. I know
Absolutely.
I've had some fascinating conversations with people as you're sitting there knitting, and just things come out that you would have never known otherwise, that are fascinating and healing and hysterical and all of the above, right?
Yeah, and I think, as I said a minute ago, it helps with listening skills. It helps you listen better if that's a quality that is valuable. And I think it is a quality that's valuable, especially with what's going on the planet. A lot of people are troubled, and when they pick up their knitting and start a conversation, it alleviates some of that tension for them. Just to have another person and sit there and knit with that person.
It is.
It's a
It's
good
very.
thing.
It
Yeah.
it's a very good thing, and we've had what 15 years of road trips to yarn shows and met thousands and thousands of knitters, and or people with their friends who are knitters, and I have to say it's one of the nicest parts of my life, are all of our knitting experiences, and it's not just about knitting, right? So there'll be people who are along who maybe they love to read or they love to
Hmm.
cook. It doesn't matter what the topic is. It's finding, I think the message is finding that thing that inspires you, or just thinking about it gives you pleasure. You know, my grandpa was certainly not a knitter, but he loved cooking. And I will never forget. He died right about 90 years old, and I will never forget walking in. He hadn't had a kitchen where he could cook for at least 10 years, and I saw him a few days before he passed. And I walked into his room, and he said, "Oh, Sherri Lynn, I just saw a cooking show about this roast." And he was so excited about, the idea of cooking this roast, even though it wasn't possible for him to do. But he could see it, he could smell it, he could taste it, he could go through the motions of it. And for all of us, again, going back to living our good fat lives, it's finding that thing, whatever it is, that brings us that kind of joy, right?
Yeah. Well, that roast was his potential.
It was.
He
That's a great way to put it. Yeah.
Yeah. It didn't matter maybe if he ever made it to fruition. It mattered that he was thinking about it and dreaming about it and wondering about it and sharing it with you. And you
Yeah.
still remember it. That's what we're talking about. Yeah.
In fact, I can almost feel tears coming because it was such. I love that the way you framed it. It was about potential. So, here's my grandpa in the last days, literally, of his life, and he is sharing with me. Oh my gosh, Liz, he's sharing with me something about potential, right? Because it brought him great joy.
And that's kind of, I think that's what propels us forward when we can see that potential in whatever it is. Even going to a ball game, or watching your kids play hockey, or going to a dance recital, and watching your granddaughter. It's the potential. And that's what I love about knitting. It's all about potential. And when someone walks in the store and they're looking around and maybe they've never been there, and I just say to them, well, what do you want to make? And they just light up. And who do you want to
Yeah.
make it for? And they light up again. And what colors do you have in mind? And we've spent enough time on the road that the conversation, and you just don't know what's going to happen from that conversation. It's like blooms. It's
It
wonderful.
it does. It's magical. I always call it, it's like Mary Poppins. It's like you just don't know where it's going to go, but it's going to be amazing, right? So
Right.
it's that setting that stage, I guess, for the potential is
Exactly.
right, right. So
I,
yeah. So I just as we kind of, do you have a thought along that, setting that stage as the theater woman that you are? I know you've produced so many high school plays. Liz and I, when we're in the car, we can be in the car sometimes for 10 hours at a time. We sing a lot.
a lot of Broadway.
A lot of
Yeah.
Broadway, yeah, yeah. Where would you say if somebody hasn't started yet, they haven't found that thing that makes their heart sing around potential? Where would you suggest somebody start?
You mean in conjunction with knitting or in general?
Just in general, in life, it could
Well,
be in
I
knitting. It could
think
be
what makes you happy? What motivates you? Where do you find joy? Where is that? Is it in reading? Is it in movies? Is it in a craft? Any craft? Making things? Like cooking could be bringing you joy. I mean, I know people that I would love to get knitting and they don't want to get learn to knit, but they love cooking. So that's
right.
where they find their creative joy. Whatever it is, I think the more you do whatever it is that brings you joy, the happier you'll be.
I'd
And
say
some people don't see
puzzles,
that
right?
yet. Pardon me?
Oh, puzzles. Puzzles has become.
Puzzles. Yeah,
I've seen
puzzles.
people who love puzzles. They just get so much joy with the anticipation of putting puzzles together.
Right.
Yeah,
And that's what keeps us going as
right.
humans. Just finding that little piece of your life or finding a new piece to put into your life that makes you sing.
Sing. Makes your
And
heart sing.
yeah, and
Yeah.
that's how I have a lot of things that make my heart sing, maybe too many things, but knitting is certainly one of them. And I can't remember a time without it. And it's like you said before, it's so far reaching that you'd never know. You'd be sitting in an airport knitting, and someone comes up to you and says, "What are you making?" And it starts a whole conversation. And suddenly they're telling you about their divorce. You know, it's like you don't know where it's going to go, and you may never see that person again, but for a moment, you're connected and you're finding joy on a lot of levels, and I
I
love
love.
that about it.
I do too. And the one thing I just do also want to mention is that I've seen, I know you at your store at Fine Points in Cleveland, Ohio, is making blankets for refugees
Oh yeah.
and also people, that are ill and are going through a trauma. It's a wonderful way, prayer shawls. It's a wonderful way to, I know when my grandpa passed, I knit a shawl for one of my friends, and it just gave me such a joy as I'm kind of crying and joy at the same time, right? That
Yeah. You
there's
know,
just,
it's a time in our lives now where things are happening and there's a lot of need and there are a lot of displaced people. And I was talking to my sister about this, and she was so frustrated because she said, I don't feel like I can do anything. She felt powerless. And I said, why don't you make a refugee blanket? Because we make refugee blankets for people who are new to our country. I'm working with a different networking group that welcomes refugees. And I said, why don't you make a refugee blanket? I'll give you the yarn. And I offer this to my customers all the time. And there was a long pause. And then she said, okay, I can do that. And she's getting some sense of productivity around it and helping. She knows someone's going to get this blanket and they're going to be happy when they get the blanket, and they're going to keep the blanket. And that's a
Right.
wonderful thing.
And it's like something you can do because
It's
we,
something.
we can't do everything, but we could do something, right?
You can do something.
We can do
And
something,
yeah,
and it contributes to the whole, right?
yeah, we're getting 4,000 Ukrainian refugees in Cleveland. And
Wow.
I'm not going to make 4,000 blankets, but I can make a few, and I can encourage people to make a blanket. And there again, it's the potential. You have the yarn, you've got the goal, and that's the potential. And it keeps me going.
So I just want to take a moment. Part of self-care is having Snedicor's cleaners in your life, and I love them. I drop out. I get a text on Monday and Thursday nights, I think. Do you have anything to pick up? And if I say yes, I just put my stuff in a bag and I drop it on the door and on the outside my house. And 2 days later or 3 days later, it shows up. And it is I can't even begin to I don't know, say the peace that it brings me, because I know that no matter what, I'm always going to be ready with my clothing. And we've actually expanded it to our bedding, like our quilts and comforters and pillows and stuff, cleaning for the season. And it's really, even my husband is like, "Oh, I've got stuff to send out." It makes life easier. And I'm so grateful to them. And they have, it's chemical free and it's good for the environment. It's really good for my clothes. And I just love Snedicor's cleaners in my life as part of my self-care, right? Right. Well, I so appreciate you. You're such a gift to my life and to everybody you touch. And thank you for being here.
Sure.
We will put, for anybody who's interested in learning more or finding more about Fine Points and the work that Liz is doing, we'll have that in our show notes. And I want to remind you to go to goodfatlife.com and check us out if you haven't already. So thank you again. Thank you again for being
My
here
pleasure.
and braving the alarm clock to
I did it.
I know
I
you
did it.
did. You did it beautifully. So take care. And to all of our community, go out and, find that potential that helps you live your good fat life.